Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just wrapped up talking about the Philadelphia 76ers and where they should move on from here, given the updates on Joel Embiid's injury. Now we are going to be switching conferences here over to the Western Conference and with the LA Clippers, who have been playing really out of their mind lately, just wrapped up a very impressive road trip. 7 games, they went 6-1. Their only loss coming to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have been an entirely hot story in their own right in the other conference. But the Clippers have really been putting on a show lately. They are 9-1 in their last 10 games, have some impressive wins coming in that stretch. They beat the Celtics, they beat the Lakers, they beat the Thunder, they beat the Heat, and now they just finished it up last night, coming off of a back-to-back. They beat the Atlanta Hawks in a very high-scoring game, 149-144. And I think really the story about this Clippers team is just how elite their offense has been. In this game last night, they scored on 19 of their last 20 possessions. If you want to exclude the intentional fouling that the Hawks were doing down the stretch, it was 15 of their last 16 true possessions. They were just getting everything they wanted, and they weren't all easy shots. They were getting to the rim at will, which was very impactful. The Hawks didn't have their starting center, Clint Capella, so that was obviously a little bit more open, even though they got some solid minutes, I thought, from some of their big men. And Onyeka Okongwu, I've always been a fan of, former lottery pick for the Hawks. And Bruno Fernando, a second-round pick a couple years ago. I actually thought that he played very well in the minutes that he was given, but the Clippers, it's just the level of their offense. They pick out mismatches. Kawhi got Trae Young on him a couple times, went to work on him, and then he hit a sidestep 3. James Harden had a step back 3 over Trae Young to give them a 10-point lead with 1:06 left in the game. The Hawks made it a little scarier down the stretch, a lack of attention for the Clippers, who, again, playing in a back-to-back, coming off of this very long road trip, sort of gave the Hawks an opportunity to come back into this one where they missed some free throws, they gave up a couple open threes, and Trae Young had this sweet no-look pass off of the inbounds, as the inbounder, I should say, to the corner for Bogdanovic, who hit a 3, not the Bojan Bogdanovic we talked about in the last segment. This is Bogdan Bogdanovic, who also could potentially be a trade candidate as well, actually, as I'm talking about this out loud. But that 3 from Bogdanovic cut the lead down to 3 for the Clippers, but some James Harden free throws put it away, and really it didn't feel like the game was ever too much in doubt, but that was just sort of a little bit of an interesting last minute that took place there. So this officially wraps up the road trip for them. They are now up to the 3rd seed in the Western Conference after how hot they have been. And I think that this team as a whole is showing that they are just about the most complete team in the Western Conference. So I wanted to take a look at the conference as a whole and sort of see how they matched up with everybody, because this team is really deep. They have Kawhi Leonard playing some of the most efficient basketball he has of his career. I think this has been the most impressive 82-game season that we've seen from Kawhi offensively. In 2019, during their playoff run, I thought that he took it to another level as well. But as far as regular season goes, he's never really been that guy to come in, night out. He's been one of the OGs, you could say, of load management and sort of taking it easy during the regular season. He showed up this year. I think that there's so much talent on the Clippers right now that it's sort of hard for him to put his name into that MVP ring, especially when there's guys getting as much usage, such as James Harden. But he should, it's one of those things where he should have his name thrown into the MVP conversation. I don't think he has a great chance of winning it, but Embiid is now officially out of it, so who knows, maybe we could see him climb his way in. Never won an MVP award. I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to think of some sort of narrative stuff that can sort of go into this, because we know that sometimes that does play a factor a bit in the league award voting. So, like I mentioned, Kawhi's been incredible. Paul George not having his best season, not shooting his best, but still a very solid player. And either one of these guys, obviously Kawhi Leonard, Defensive Player of the Year in his prime, but both of these guys have been very good defenders throughout their career, but injuries have slowed them down, and just general aging has slowed them down for a good amount in their careers. And you can just see them turn it on at times. It's a matter of that consistency, and that's where we come to the conversation about the regular season, how long it is, how much they're sort of being asked to do on offense. And, you know, their defense has been solid, the Clippers has. They are 10th in the NBA right now in defensive rating. At least in January, they were 10th in defensive rating. They're sort of turning their season around here on that side of the ball. Last night was not a good step in the right direction as far as that, but maybe some external factors going on there. And I think that you look at that team, and there's definitely a ceiling for them to be better on defense than they are. It's just a matter of sort of the buy-in, which takes me to James Harden, where there's always questions about buy-in with him. He's having an incredible year. Had there not been so much drama sort of surrounding, and the Western Conference is deep as it is, but you maybe could have made an argument for him being an all-star the way that he's sort of turned this thing around. Now, I wouldn't have had him even over some of the snubs like Fox and Sabonis really stick out to me as the main ones, but Harden probably slides in somewhere in that next range with the likes of a Brandon Ingram and Lauri Markkanen. So he's done a great job this season as far as getting the bigs involved, really working that team chemistry actually. And again, it's Harden, who chemistry isn't really his number one thing, but the way that he would stay extra after practices with the big guys trying to work on this pick and roll game, and it has seemed to help. He's helped unlock Zubac a lot. And, you know, Plumlee and Tice are also solid options coming off of the bench as well. They all sort of do similar things, and Harden utilizes them similarly. So I think that the way that Harden has sort of went about this season is a very good sign for them. It's just, you know, when it comes to that playoffs, how locked in is he going to be? But at least for the Clippers here, I think that, you know, Harden isn't the number one guy. He's still very high in usage and everything when it comes to being a ball handler. But if he disappears, you have the Paul Georges, you have the Kawhi Leonards that can take over the system more. And as long as they are healthy, I think that that's still a scary sight, because they're a very deep team. I think that Norman Powell is one of the more underrated scorers in the league. He isn't asked to do a lot this season. He's been purely coming off of the bench for them, but he's been incredibly efficient when he gets the opportunities. Probably won't be heavily considered for Sixth Man of the Year, but just based off of, again, all the mouths to feed within that Clippers team, that he doesn't really get all the touches that, say, a Tim Hardaway Jr. has been getting. But I think you could switch Norman Powell in for Tim Hardaway Jr. and they'd be doing very similar things. Powell has been so efficient. He's shooting just 9.6 shots per game, which is the least amount that he shot since 2019, where he wasn't getting 20 minutes a game in sort of that early arc that he had in Toronto. Now he is playing more, but just on those 9.6 shots, he's shooting 49.6% from the field and 45% from three. He is shooting 55% on corner threes. A little bit interesting if you look at his shot chart, just the way that he so heavily favors that left corner, but he's automatic from it. 55% is unbelievable. So he fills his role, I just feel like, so well. And you have other guys coming off the bench, such as Russell Westbrook, who does Westbrook things. Sometimes the decision making isn't always there. The one possession that they didn't score out of their last 20 last night was Westbrook jacking up a corner three. So, sometimes that's what you get. But you get tons of energy. You get the defensive presence, which he showed up, made some big plays for them in the playoffs last year when they faced off against the Suns, and that was him coming in on just half the season. And he's more settled into this role coming off the bench now. Amir Coffey, I think, has been a very good player for them as well. So, again, just how do they stack up against the rest of the West? I think that given that they're going to be fully healthy for the playoffs, because anything can change given some of the history of these guys, but as the 3 seed now, I would confidently say that they are better than the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think that the Timberwolves are sort of dealing with a handful of different problems now. The defense has been staggering a little bit for how strong it came out early in the year. Maybe that has something to do with this little pre-All-Star break slump that we see a lot of teams and players sometimes have, but hasn't had a great offense either in clutch games, where I think if the Clippers and the Timberwolves are playing in a series and it comes down to the last few possessions, I think there's just way more shot creation ability on the Clippers side. I feel good about the Clippers being a better team than the Timberwolves. The Oklahoma City Thunder, the other team ahead of them, I think this would be such an interesting matchup. I hope that we see it, just the way that all the storylines coming into it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander used to be on the Clippers but was traded for Paul George, so he's probably looking to get some revenge. Paul George had the quote that came out a few weeks ago saying that both teams won from that trade that all went down, and a lot of people on the internet sort of clowned on him for that. But if the Clippers are able to get some sort of a championship run out of this, because keep in mind, the Clippers made that trade with Shai and all those picks to get Paul George because it essentially guaranteed that they would be getting Kawhi Leonard as well. So it was really a package deal. If they get a championship, I don't think you can really say that the Clippers lost. I think that that's just sort of a rule that I always have. If you get a championship out of it, you can't be a loser. So, I think that that would be a storyline coming into this. I think that their play styles, it's very interesting because I think that Zubac has been a very solid center for a handful of years. I think that he's looked at some of his best playing alongside Harden. So I would imagine they would probably try and use his physicality against this maybe a little bit undersized Thunder team. But these are also two teams that can both play small ball. The Clippers can throw out some of these lineups where all 5 guys on the court can be dangerous with the ball. And the Thunder, on the other hand, they didn't even play any centers in their 2 play-in tournament games last season. So it is very much possible for us to see a little bit of a small ball showdown as well. I've been saying that I think that the Thunder are a little bit Chet reliant, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that it is notable at least. So I would take the Clippers in a series against the Thunder, but I think it would be close. The Phoenix Suns, another team, I think that they're on a similar tier, but I think that they're almost just a step above roster construction wise. Both teams that you worry a little bit about the injuries with some of their key guys, and if you are missing one of the big 3 members, you wouldn't be surprised if they fell apart in the playoffs. But I think that the Clippers are better suited with guys coming off of the bench and sort of filling those roles, and the other people in the big three to be able to step up and carry the workload. With the Suns, it's Kevin Durant, it's Devin Booker, it's Brad Beal. If Brad Beal is really running your team, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful or anything, Beal just had a great game the other night where he scored 43 points. He had 6 assists against his former team in the Wizards, which is fun, but it's against the Wizards, who are the 28th defense in the league. So it's not like that's a huge accomplishment. And I like their bench guys. I like Okogie. I like Keita Bates-Diop. I like Chimezie Metu. All of these other players when they're coming off of the bench. But we saw Okogie when it came to playing big minutes for them in the playoffs. Production wasn't really there. The rest of these guys, they just sort of patched together with the limited payroll they had, sealing them on minimum contracts from other teams. So I would have the Clippers winning in that series as well. A little bit of a rematch from last year would be another interesting series. And all in all, I think this is the Denver Nuggets conference to lose. I just can't really pick against them, especially we saw a little bit of a lack of care with them towards the end of the regular season last year. And now, it hasn't been dominant for them. They have a handful of big wins and everything, but they haven't been the number 1 seed very much, if at all, during the season. I don't know if they ever held it. They did get out to a hot start, I think, but really for the majority of the season, they've been sort of hovering in that, 4 or 5-ish range. I think that they are the cream of the crop team to beat. Now, they're relying a lot on their youth movement with Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. I've loved the minutes that Peyton Watson has given them this season. I think that just as a whole, it is a lot easier to incorporate some of that youth and lack of maturity when you are playing with a Nikola Jokic, who just makes everything for his teammates so much easier. So I think the Nuggets are the team to beat. I think the Clippers are right on their tails, though, if they are fully healthy. So that's if I'm power ranking the Western Conference, I would have the Clippers at 2. But as far as how they're actively playing right now, if I'm picking any team to win a game tonight in the Western Conference, and maybe even in the league, it is the LA Clippers, because they have been incredible. So we're going to be taking our final break. When we come back on the other side, sticking with basketball, but going to be shifting to college basketball. So stick with us. We'll be right back.